Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. We are looking ahead to the deadline of Gameweek 31. It's team news time. We'll have all the latest lineup and injury news developments thanks to our resident editor. I'm not going to call you Guru. Editor of Fantasy Football Scout, Neale, who's been studiously listening in to all the managers have been saying today. Neale, how are you?
Not too bad, Joe. Yeah, not too bad. Probably not as headline grabbing as last week in terms of updates. There's obviously one major one from Man United, but
yeah,
other than that, pretty quiet, I think, today.
Yes, of course. I mean, Manchester United. Their team sheet's going to be radically different from last week. Lots of injuries at the beginning of the week, and a few more as well have arisen during the week as well. So just before we move on, just want to welcome those joining us in the live chat. Kyle, Big Tips, Rodriv, Historia Films, Philip Appleby, West Down Trading, I should say. That's obviously his user's full name, Mr. Trading's full name there. Piaz, Jammer, and Derek. Thanks so much for joining us early. Many more of you do join us as this progresses. So we will move on. And also, just a reminder as well, do press that like button and do subscribe. And also, all of our videos are available on a podcast. So you may well be listening to this rather than looking at our lovely faces. Let's move on. Got Villa against Newcastle. What is the latest from Villa ahead of this clash?
Yeah, three of them still out and a new addition. So Kamara, Cash, and that's not a good start, is it? Where is it? Kamara, Cash, and Coutinho. They're still out.
The three C's.
Bale. Yes, exactly. Yeah. You misspelled Kamara.
Yeah.
Bailey's the new addition to that list. So he came off last weekend with a hamstring injury. Emery doesn't think it's too serious, but it's enough to rule him out of this one.
Okay, and as for Newcastle as well, there's always seems to be some kind of injury news there at Newcastle. What's the latest?
Yeah, a bit of a revolving door this season. Sort of whenever somebody comes back, another one exits. So we've got Almiron on the cusp of a return. That's a lot ahead of schedule, actually. Wasn't expecting him back till the end of April, maybe beginning of May. But he's been back in training this week, and he could make a return this weekend. Probably as a sub. St. Maximum's out though. He was ruled out last weekend as well, but I don't think it's serious. And Howe wants him. Hopefully, we'll have him back at the training centre at some stage next week, and then be available very soon. However, did see media reports suggesting he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. So
okay.
And the media reports were accurate on Almiron's early return when Howe was denying that. So maybe there's something there. Apart from that, it's just Emil Kraft who's out, along with St. Maximin.
Does this look like a Wilson start game, Isak start, or both start?
I think Isak. Isak's the first choice.
Okay.
Marginally. I don't think by much. We did see Brentford last weekend. They both played at the same time. Newcastle were chasing the game, however. There was 1-0 down at half-time. And Howe brought them, paired them together in the second half. I do think they'll be back to a lone striker this weekend, given how good Villa are at the moment. I think it'll be a lot more of a conservative shape, and I think it'll be Isak to start.
Okay, let's move on to those 3 o'clock kickoffs. Chelsea against Brighton. So Brighton unjustly denied a victory over Spurs last week. They've got the chance to take on another big name in Chelsea, and so they do have a bit of form against Chelsea. Meanwhile, Chelsea are not in good shape, especially with they've gone back to their old manager who's not having a great start. But what is the latest there? I mean, because they played in midweek. Chilwell went off, so you would assume he would start because there's no need to rest him. But what else has Frank Lampard been saying?
Yeah, he may be one of the few midweek starters who actually keeps their place by the sounds of it. I think there could be a big rotation. Ooh. Klaxon sounded here. Injury-wise, actually not in too bad a shape. Koulibaly's the only one who's of note. He's going to be out for some weeks now with a hamstring injury. Broja's out long-term, and Chukwuemeka missed the midweek game as well. Apart from that, I think everyone's fit. Okay. However,
this
is where the carnage could begin. Lampard says tomorrow's going to be an opportunity for some players that didn't play in the Champions League. Ooh. And possibly didn't play last weekend either. So he's cited the need for freshness against a team like Brighton. So I think there are going to be some wholesale changes here. I think you're going to be, as you said there, Chilwell sent off. against Real, so was suspended for the second leg. So hopefully he does start. Around him, though, I mean, it could be anybody. I mean, it could be like some Mendy coming in between the posts. There's rumours of that happening.
Yeah, I heard that. There was
Basically, Kepa.
strong rumours on Twitter about that, about Mendy. I mean,
Yeah.
this is as predicted for Frank Lampard and Kepa. They hate each other,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah, we mentioned this last week, didn't we? I think
Yeah.
Kepa kind of bad-mouthed Lampard after he'd gone, and this came off the back of him being demoted to the bench when Mendy was brought in. So I would not be surprised if that's one of the changes. Beyond that, I mean, it could be basically you could be just pitting throwing a dart at a list of names and then coming up with a prediction, because you've got Chalobah could come in, Badiashile, of course, who's not in the Champions League squad, Loftus-Cheek, Gallagher, Mount, who hasn't started the last two, who's been injured, Pulisic, Aubameyang's even been talked up by Lampard in his presser, Mudryk as well,
Havertz.
Zakaria, Havertz, any number of those players who haven't featured in the last two or haven't started at least one of the last two could come in, and the usual names. I think the likes of Kante will probably be preserved. Thiago Silva will be preserved because he's just come back. Reece James, I think, will be benched. Or worse, I've just dropped my headphone there. Carried on seamlessly. So those players, I think, are at real risk this weekend.
Okay, rightio. Okay, not good if you've stacked up on Chelsea players.
Nope.
So meanwhile, Brighton, what has De Zerbi been saying? I mean, they've been quite. I mean, apart from in the striker place, they've been pretty easy to predict most weeks.
Yeah, exactly. The only two spots have really been, as you said there, Ferguson v Welbeck, and then it's centre half as well, where Webster sort of is coming in for Colwill. That's going to be settled this week because Colwill's ineligible to play against his parent club. He's on loan from Chelsea, so he can't play. There was a worrying line from De Zerbi today. He said there's not many serious issues. I think a few minor concerns he sort of hinted at, and that he hadn't decided on his starting 11. Now, I did have a look at some social media posts from midweek. Brighton had an open training session, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday. McAllister set the alarm bells ringing because he wasn't seen him initially, but then it turned out he was just late. And he was there eventually. Someone who exited was Jason Steele. So he was training, I think, and then wasn't spotted with the goalkeepers later. So whether that's one of the minor problems that De Zerbi's referring to, he didn't elaborate today.
Well, that would be a problem for me as a Kepa and Steele owner. So.
I mean that might be complete incidental exit. It could have been anything really. De Zerbi did mention him by name today. Okay. I was just looking at the comments from the open training session this week as to who was, potentially a concern, and Steele was the only name who I saw being raised. But yeah, could turn up me now.
Fingers crossed there. Everton against Fulham. Usual Calvert-Lewin question, but there's a few other issues as well at Everton.
Yes, there are. Yes, Doucouré is still suspended, and they've just lost Seamus Coleman as well to a hamstring injury. Doesn't necessarily mean that Patterson comes back in, though, because Dyche has been talking about his lack of game time since he was injured, and they're not being able to get him too many reserve games. So might not even be Patterson coming in. It could be Godfrey switching flanks, and then Mikalenko coming in at left back. So yes, Coleman's out, as well as Townsend and Doucouré suspended. Vinagre has been back on the grass after his Achilles issue. Calvert-Lewin, suggestions from the media are that he's going to be back for this one. He's been in team training this week. Dyche giving it away as he often does. He said that he's been training well and going along well, so he's nearing a return. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the squad this weekend, based on what I've read in the press.
Okay, and they face Fulham. We know Mitrovic is suspended. He's got 4 or 5 more matches of his suspension to go. But any other news from Fulham?
Yeah, 6 games I think he's still got to go. Nothing new, according to Silva yesterday. Kazawa's still a few weeks away from a return. I think Cabano's back in training as well, but he's been out for months and months and months, so might not be match fit enough yet.
Okay. Meanwhile, Southampton against new sensation across Europe, Crystal Palace, under that dynamic young boss Roy Hodgson. They're quite something in attack at the moment, but let's go for the home side first. There's quite a few injuries, I understand, at Southampton.
There are, yeah, most of them pre-existing. So we knew about Larios, who's out for the season. Adams and Salisu still aren't recovered yet. And they've been joined by Mislav Orsic as well, who's out with a hip problem. Livramento, who's been out for almost a full calendar year, I think it was April 2022, he's going to play for the B team tonight. So he's going to be in under 23s action and should return thereafter as well to the matchday squad. So the former budget cult favourite in FPL should soon be back amongst us. Nothing on Lavia, who came off with a tight hamstring, but he was seen in training in midweek, so he's obviously shaking that off and he's available.
Okay. Meanwhile, I couldn't see any news about Nathan Ferguson. Has Roy Hodgson just given up even updating us?
Yeah, maybe quickly realised it was a completely futile exercise. They have got the embargo section to come, so maybe there might be something there.
That'll be front page.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll take down the Rashford headline and put Ferguson up. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen this all the way through either, so it could be that he's just a complete footnote. We did hear about Nathaniel Klein, who's out now with a knee problem. He joins Guaita and Zaha, who are the main absentees.
Okay.
They are aiming for the return at the end of the month, those two, Guaita and Zaha. Edward's fine. He was flagged, but it turns out he wasn't even injured. Hodgson said he just decided it was a tactical change, so he's all right. And Chris Richards is back as well, probably to take a place on the bench.
Okay, moving on. Spurs against Bournemouth. I'll be cheering Bournemouth on for this one. But what shape are Spurs in before they meet the mighty Dorset side?
Yeah, they are pretty much as you were. So Davies, Royale, Sessegnon, Bentancur, Bissouma still out injured. Near returns, I think a lot of those. Lucas Morris suspended as well. Richarlison was on the bench last weekend, and Stellini said today that he's had another week of training, and he's the only one who's like sort of nearing a first team challenge, but they still have to be careful with him.
Okay, yeah, take risks. I've got in the quote here. He won't take risks with him. What has he got to? What has Brazil's number 9 got to do to get a start for this team?
It's not like the current incumbents are particularly tearing up the place, are they? With some pretty average displays. So
basically Harry Kane and some other blokes. I mean, Bournemouth. How are they for this?
They could have Senesi back. He's been in training this week. He's had a very short-term absence. Traore is still out though, and we didn't hear anything new. O'Neil said everyone's come through unscathed.
Rightio. Okay, we'll move swiftly on to Wolves against Brentford. Quite a few Brentford players still knocking around in teams, sort of wildcard teams from around the sort of 26, 27 game week mark. So they may be needed. But first of all, with Wolves, what's happening there ahead of this clash?
I don't think there's anything new. I think Neves and Johnny are still suspended. We knew that already. And the two long-term ones, Kalajic and Chiquinho, they're still out. Nunes, he seemed to limp off last week, but then nothing seems to have come of that. There was nothing from Lopetegui yesterday. So we assume he's fine. Podence is still available for the time being. He's been charged by the FA course for that spitting incident. And I think they've appealed it. So for now, he's available for selection.
Okay. And for Brentford as well?
Yeah. Frank was one of the four to hold his presser yesterday. He has lost Pontus Jansson, not just for the rest of the season, but forever now, because he's just announced today that he's leaving Brentford at the end of the season. I think they go back to Sweden. But he's not going to get it doesn't look like he's going to get a farewell appearance because he's got a hamstring problem. And Frank said yesterday that it's very unlikely that he'll be back before the end of the campaign.
That's sad.
Yeah. He's been around for a while, hasn't he? In England, he's with Leeds before that.
Yeah.
So he was a championship favourite for a long time. Christopher AJ still out. Lewis Potter, I think, still out as well. But Frank Onyeka is back.
Okay. A bit more of a enticing tie for FPL managers. Man City against Leicester. We know about Phil Foden's going to be out because he's still covering from his appendix issue. But has Pep Guardiola given us any hints about rotation or the lineup in this fixture?
Not particularly. I'll go back through and listen to it again. But what I've seen so far, he only talked about Foden in terms of injury, so he's not even back in training yet. Foden. He was towards the end of his timeline like now in terms of when he should have been back involved, but still hasn't been with the team as of yet. No other injuries that we know of. It was confirmed that De Bruyne's substitution was tactical in midweek. And there was a bit on that today, actually. De Bruyne was angry at being subbed off. He'd just taken a whack, I think, in the ankle minutes beforehand, but Guardiola seems to have downplayed that. But Pep saying today that he understands completely the reaction. At the same time, understand Morris didn't play, Laporte, Gomez. And then he went on to say that, can you imagine the last 7 years without Kevin De Bruyne? It's impossible. So he's obviously trying to diffuse the situation. And then finished off by saying the players believe it's personal when I don't select them, but it's not. It's him trying to win the game the best for City. So no injuries beyond Foden that we're aware of.
Okay. So I mean, I just before we came on out, I got Jack Grealish in, so hopefully he's going to start.
Have you?
This week, along with 1 in 10 other FPL managers. He's up to 10% ownership.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Leicester, they got a new manager. Oh, well, an old manager, not their old manager, but they got Craig Shakespeare there. They got John Terry. They've got and of course Dean Smith, who FPL managers aren't too keen on after he disparaged them while he was Villa manager. But yeah, what's he had to say, and what shape are Leicester in ahead of this?
Well, he sort of recouped a bit of credibility by actually giving us some team news today, so I like him for that. Tielemans is back; he's available for selection, and Dewsbury Hall is free of suspension as well. So that's 2 more bodies in midfield. They have lost they're 2 wingers from last week actually. So Harvey Barnes is out, short-term absence, could be back in 32, hamstring problem. Ricardo Pereira, who was I think out of position last week, he is out for longer with the same. It's a hamstring injury again, but a more serious one. So those 2 are out, along with James Justin, who's long-term. Smith's talking about, actually, when he talked about those 2 players being out, he said that that's left us short in the wide areas, which is a bit of a damning indictment of Tete, who's a winger. So I wonder if he'll choose this game to go wingerless and maybe sort of play like a narrow midfield, or perhaps play a wing-back system, given that it's away at Man City. But Maddison, he was talking Maddison up, big in his credentials. We saw how well he did with Grealish, didn't we, at Villa? Smithy got the best out of a sort of talismanic floating midfielder in Grealish, so maybe he can do the same with Maddison now. Okay,
well, I hope not, because I just got rid of him. so let's move on to West Ham against Arsenal. David Moyes, he's usually coy, but has he had anything to say ahead of this?
Well, I kind of believe him this week, because he has just got back from Belgium, and he says he hasn't got much of a chance to assess his squad's fitness, but he's hopeful that everyone's fine. The only name he mentioned was Scamaca, who was already red flagged. He is going to have knee surgery tomorrow, so that might be the end of his season.
Okay, and last week from the Arsenal camp, there was rumours of a mystery man will appear on the team sheet back from injury. That didn't actually transpire, but we think we know the identity of that mystery man now, don't we? So which of their injured troops is back?
Yeah, in true sort of call it Rooney fashion, it's ... Eddie Nketiah. He's the one who's back. He has been in training this week, and Arteta has passed him fit. Saliba's still out. He's making progress, and I think he said today, Arteta, that he's not too far away from a return to the grass. So a few weeks, they're hopeful of him being back. So I don't know, maybe give me 34, 35 at a guess. But he's red flagged along with Tomiyasu and El Neni.
Okay, given that Jesus tends to be subbed off at the moment around the 60-minute mark, we could be seeing some minutes from Nketiah. That could be, maybe.
Possibly, but I think he's now very much fifth in the pecking order in that 3-man front line. I think Trossard's, he's first off the bench. Trossard can play through the middle, so I think Nketiah's got a way to go before he's back where he was in early January. Okay.
Nottingham Forest, they're seemingly relegated, and sort of relegated from this as well, because there's no press conference news as of yet for them. So we've got is Manchester United. Just before we move on to Manchester United, is it just really delayed, or is his because he's a well-known liar, isn't he? So perhaps his pants are on fire. I don't know.
Perhaps he lied about the time it was going to be held. Yeah. This is a common thing every week. It's just poorly reported on in terms of there's not many people there, whereas you get Pep quotes straight away, you get Lampard quote straight away. There's just, it's limited to the Nottinghamshire journalist. And often the time that you're given by the Premier League, which is what I get every week, doesn't translate to when that press conference comes out. So it may actually be held then, but then the quotes are embargoed, a bit like with Emery, a bit like Eddie Howe. You don't get them till later in the afternoon.
Okay.
So I'll keep tabs on that. I'll tell you what I do know about Forest, because they have got a lengthy injury list. So they're definitely without Wood, Bolly, Henderson, who's ineligible anyway for this weekend. Ben Coney, Richards, Yates and Aurier, they were day-to-day assessments, I think, from last week. So we'll wait to hear from Cooper as to they're any closer. Two names who are probably going to be absent now because they came off with hamstring injuries last weekend. That was Kouyaté and Neale.
Okay.
And Cooper had previously mentioned that Renan Lodi was going to be out for a little while as well. Finally, Gustavo Scarpa was absent in the Gameweek 30 with an unspecified problem. So we're running into double figures there for flags.
Okay, and the situation is no less complicated at Manchester United. Who's in, out, who's perhaps going to shake it all about this week?
Yeah, so where to start with this? There's a lot to unpack. Rashford, I guess. So he came off last weekend with a groin injury, and then I think it was on Wednesday, Ten Hag said he was going to be missing for a few games. I think that was the quote, wasn't it? Last night he sort of threw the cat amongst the pigeons by saying that he had a chance of returning against Sevilla next week. This is the return leg. Now, he didn't just bring that up. He was asked a question about whether there was a prospect of that happening, and he said, "Yeah, there's a chance, but I can't say for certain yet." So I don't know if he just kicked the ball down the road. Today he was name checked as still being injured. So Ten Hag was discussing Martial and his ability to last 90 minutes. He said, we don't have many options in the front line with Rashford injured and Garnacho injured, so we have to be careful. So Rashford's obviously red flag for this one. Beyond that, there's a lot of uncertainty. Two big blows last night at centre-half. Varane and Martinez came off. Martinez looks the more serious. There's rumours of a fractured metatarsal, but Ten Hag won't elaborate. He says the assessment's still continuing, but those two are obviously big doubts now. And Martinez's gear is definitely out. Better news elsewhere, though. So obviously we knew Casemiro was back for this one. 4-match domestic bans now served. McTominay should be back as well. Luke Shaw, from an FPL perspective, is big news because a lot of people still want him. I certainly do. I've kept a hold of him. Yeah, he could be fit for this one. So in midweek, Ten Hag said he should be back at short-term notice. And then he's gone one step further today by saying they could return to the squad this weekend. They've got 2 more training sessions, so he's not completely sure. But it looks positive for sure. Okay. If not this week, then definitely for what happens beyond it. So I think that just leaves the long-term injuries. That's Heaton, Van der Beek and Garnacho. But yeah, a lot to unpack there.
I mean, of course, Luke Shaw can play at centre-back as well.
He can,
With those centre-back injuries, it may well be that he'll be needed there. That could be good news.
That's what I've put in the predicted lineup, actually, because I think Ten Hag's talked about the understanding between Shaw and Maguire before with their England connections. Yeah. And he likes his sort of ball-playing centre-half as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, especially with Shaw just back. Centre-half's less taxing, I think, in terms of running up and down the flank than left-back is. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen.
Yeah, and also that's possibly good news for the bonus points if they can keep a clean sheet, because, of course, he gets lots of the centre-backs tend to do well with passing stats there. Okay, and moving on to the final game. This is our Monday. We've got Leeds hosting Liverpool. Let's go with the home side again first. What's Gracia been saying about his troops?
Yeah, he's one of the managers not to give much away, but he was pressed today. Fair play to the reporters who were present. They wouldn't let it go. Kept asking him about Max Wober, and he finally revealed that he had been in training some days, but they've got 2 more days to go and they'll assess him. I think it was a hamstring problem with him. The only ones who know about who are red flagged are Adams and Dallas. Okay. However, Gracia then reverted back to his enigmatic type by saying that there may be some other concerns who he's not going to name, and some of them who were involved last weekend against Palace. So be prepared to see a couple of absentees or benchings that we didn't know about this week on Monday.
Meanwhile, Klopp has been a bit more forthcoming with injury news at Liverpool, hasn't he?
He has, yeah. So he's told us that Diaz is going to be back in the squad, providing there's no repercussions in the next few days. He's been back training for a while now, but he'll be on the bench at Elland Road. He's been out for 6 months, I think. Yeah, so it's he's not going to be trouble in the starting 11 just yet. Someone who might be is Thiago. So he was back on the bench against Arsenal, and Klopp saying he's now a candidate for starting. Two fresh concerns, actually. I think the minor concerns: Alisson and Ibrahima Konate,
Oh,
who's arguably Liverpool's best centre half now, and he's taken over from Van Dijk. They've both missed a couple of days of training this week. However, they were expected back today, and given that it's a Monday night game, you'd think that stands him in good stead. He didn't say what the problems were. He just said there was been some issues with illness and a few knocks, so it could be either or for those two. He said Konate was due back in the grass today, and Alisson was due back in individual training today. So, but again, individual training for goalkeeper, I don't think that's a massive problem. As it would be for an outfielder. So that just leaves Ramsey, Bajcetic and Keita, who are out long term.
righty. Let's have a look at the roundup of what we've got so far. So we've got fit to play Tielemans for Liverpool. Diaz, although very likely as a bench a bench role. Edouard at Palace is back, and Nketiah is fit to play. Questionable Patterson is fitness issues there. Calvert-Lewin, similar fitness issues. Shaw coming back from injury, could be fit to play. Still slightly questionable, but we think he's more on the fit to play side. McTominay is also fit, but you never know coming back from injury. Martial, there was those fitness doubts with the European competitions in mind. Konate and Alisson, those slight worries because they missed a couple of days of training, so it's questionable still. And Richarlison, fit and ready to go, but God knows what he's got to do to get into that squad. I couldn't fit in. God knows what he's got to do, so I just put fitness. Major doubt, Martinez and Varane, obviously with injuries and knocks, they're pretty much out, but I put them as major doubt because I don't think did he literally say they are out?
I don't think he said those words specifically yet, hence why they're 25% on FPL, but it sounds for all purposes that they are.
Yeah, so they're sort of veering into the out column, but they're pretty much there. Coleman's out for Everton. Barnes for Leicester's out. Injury. Pereira, hamstring for Leicester as well as out. Shea Adams still out with his calf. Zaha is groin injury issues still going on, and also Guita is out. I didn't have enough room to put Guita in, but Zaha's there's a little reminder for me. Bailey is a new Villa recruit to the out table there with his hamstring. Rashford with the groin issues, but could be back as soon as game week 33 perhaps. I've seen mentions could be if he's possibly back for Europe, could be back for 33 maybe. Foden, appendix issue still. Saliba still got those back problems at Arsenal. Mitrovic still suspended. 6 games, I think you were saying, still got left of that. Almiron still injured. St. Maximin has joined him on the treatment table with his hamstring. Koulibaly at Chelsea is hamstrung as well. So I think that more or less completes it there. I've got as many as I could fit in there. Neale, thanks so much for joining me, and thanks so much everyone for joining us. Do remember to press that like button. Do remember to subscribe, and also remember that all our videos are available as podcasts as well. Neale, thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you next week, and good luck with the game week.
My pleasure. Yeah, good luck everybody, and see you next Friday.